first slide I want to take us to, and the first conversation point, is really defining accessibility. I mean, we're talking about how to make a candidate journey inclusive, but there's a lot of different nebulous terms within that, and buzzwords on the fringes of it that probably could do with some definition. So if I can invite Jim, Cathal, your take on what accessibility is to you, and how that might be the same as, interchangeable with, or different to inclusion.
Even like accessibility to me, you know, it's that while it's mainly around you know, people with various different disabilities and neurodivergent disabilities and so on, and that would be, you know, the main focus.
Yeah.
We would have partnered with you guys to make it accessible to these people.
Yeah.
But it also to me, it's also making the application process accessible to people whichever way they want to apply. And I just going back to my own experience, say 7 years ago, where I wasn't able to apply to jobs with a digital CV or with a video, or with any of those kind of features that I had kind of built into my website at that stage. And you know, not everybody, particularly with a paper CV, it can be very restrictive and so on. And you know, providing the tools for people to use, you know, they put their best foot forward in various different ways. It's not just going to be down on a text-laden job description or text-laden CV. Using video and allowing people with various different disabilities the option to use video or audio, and not just be hindered by a paper CV, where some people might find it articulate or difficult to articulate some of their experiences and achievements and so on paper, but they might be able to do it really, really well through video or through audio.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, while the main focus of our accessibility and partnering with you guys was to provide people with various different disabilities all the great tools that you guys offer, but it's also about giving the flexibility of how to apply for the jobs, and harnessing digital CV these days, I think is very important, and providing those video and audio tools, yeah, and so on in it. And I think, you know, the accessibility is also ease of use. It has to be easy to use. It has to be, you have to be able to do it on mobile. Yeah. And, you know, I think the Recite Me tool works very well with our system. Just because the way our system is built, I think it lends itself very nicely to the front end part of it. Yeah. So it's easy use and providing people a number of different ways to kind of put their best foot forward, and not just hinder them into just a text CV, you know.
Yeah, good, thanks, Cathal. Jim, do you have any perspective you want to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose reflecting on what Cathal was saying there, but really on that first term, accessibility, you know, I think a lot of people, and you know, I put my hands up sometimes on accessibility, you think it from your own accessibility point of view, and I think that's the wider picture. You know, and respect for everyone really on the way they want to access information, be that online or be it offline, even considering how we are on a Zoom call now, seeing people and not seeing people. Mike and I were chatting just briefly before this about people with doing sign language or subtitles and that kind of thing. So accessibility can and tends to have been a lot of the time, I feel, from conversations about someone's own personal point of view, rather than considering the wider arena of everyone. So I think it's respect for all, really, is where accessibility comes in.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, chaps. Yeah, I think the simple formula that I've put there is you know, again, just lifting the veil on Recite Me a little bit. This is how we think. This is essentially where we position our tool and our service in the wider conversation around accessibility. And I suppose, and feel free, everyone that's listening, to throw something on chat if this is stuff you already know, and we'll move forward. But accessibility over the last 10 years has come to mean very different things. In the late 90s, accessibility was very much linked to the Equality Act and physical accessibility ramps on restaurants and on businesses, making sure that those that had need had the easy functionality to get around. With the rise of digital and everything's going online, from paying your bills to booking your holidays, web accessibility has become the watchword, and that's become synonymous with something called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short. Just in terms of throwing something on chat, if you're listening, have people heard of the WCAG or WCAG? Michael, if you could just check the chat to see if people are saying yes or no to that.
I'm looking. I'm on watch.
You're on watch?
Yeah.
Because the thing about, sorry?
Becky hasn't heard of WCAG. Neither has Owen.
Okay, let me stop sharing that for a second, and I'll just bring something else up to have a conversation about then. So the thing about WCAG is it's a set of industry practice guidelines, and it's put together by the W3C group, and the W3C group are essentially the godfathers of the internet, the custodians of the internet, and they come together. Let me see if we can see this. Let me know if my screen's popped into view yet.
This is the deadline for September. Is this the?
No, so this is the guidelines, Cathal. So this is essentially a standard by which, whether you're in the US or the UK, Europe, most regulations tend to point to this industry standard as being, if you're going to talk about web accessibility or being accessible with your digital landscape, you're talking about complying with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines or following them. And without wanting to bore everyone, it's 78 tests split across 4 different things: perceivability, operability, understanding, and robustness.
Guys, we can't. Are you wanting to share your screen there?
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not shared. Sorry.
No, it's not. Sorry, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, thank you for keeping
it is now. We can see it now. Yes.
Fab. Yeah. So this is the W3C initiative. These guys are the custodians of the internet, and they manage this standard. It's recently been updated to 2.1, and there's all sorts of tests. Now, the problem with accessibility in this sense is if I start talking to you about 78 tests to run on your website, everyone falls asleep pretty quickly, or everyone gets very nervous because it's compliance. It starts to feel a bit like some pain that we might have all experienced with GDPR and those 4 letters that people have heard of. And it really isn't, it really shouldn't be that scary, but it has that feeling because it's compliance. What we try to do in going back to the formula approach is we try very much to move the conversation beyond the ticking of the box of accessibility, because as I'm sure you'll all appreciate, is my screen share popping up there, Michael? Can you see the?
Just gone there now again.
It's gone at the moment, Daz.
Ah, sorry. You see, I'm a man and I can't multitask. That's the bottom line of it. That is the bottom line of it. Let me see if I can get this working again.
There we go. I can see the W3C website. There we go.
We're back to the format. Yeah, so really simply, accessibility has kind of been, it's a nebulous term. It's been kind of hijacked by the compliance brigade, WCAG, tick boxing, getting those standards done. And it's a perfectly fair place to start. And Cathal, I think you mentioned the upcoming public sector regulation that requires public sector sites to be compliant to the WCAG 2.1 standard. I'll not say too much more on that because it's a dry topic, but we can send some. Well, that's accessibility.
I've lost you, Darren. I don't know when else can hear Darren at the moment.
Somehow it's lost.
Yeah, I think I lost him there as well. Yeah.
Am I back?
You're back in the room.
I think it was probably the fire alarm. Okay, so accessibility being that nebulous term isn't something we solve necessarily. What we do is we take the friction out of the customer journey and we keep it personal. So when we apply this to trying to be inclusive, what we're basically saying is you can have an accessible website, you can tick the boxes, but you can still be an absolute nightmare for the candidate. You can absolutely, to use the paper-based CV analogy, you can have the paper-based CV as the only route through, and that it immediately makes it challenging for a whole host of different cognitive challenges, dyslexia being the first that comes to mind. So we look at accessibility plus usability equals inclusion, and inclusion for us is a mindset. That's sort of where I see it. And the mindset is, how do we remove barriers in everything? And that's led to a rise in, well, I'll introduce Cathal and Jim here. I think it's changed the conversation from being how do we fix what we've got to how do we start from a more compliant, a more accessible place. What do you guys think on inclusion?
I mean, I think really you hit the nail on the head there when you were talking about a tick box exercise. And I think that's what a lot of people did, was just a tick box exercise. And that's what we need to meet. It's going beyond that, really. It's looking beyond that tick box to really consider all aspects and elements to make that, as you say, accessibility and usability to equal inclusion. And I think that's where we're at this point in time. I think we look at people who have been furloughed, working from home, using Zoom, don't have an office set up. You know, a lot of people now are working online. I wouldn't really class it working from home. Those that can are working online more and more, which means that whole element of accessibility, which I think going back to the thing you were saying first of all, Darryn, was in a lot of people's minds is that little badge, that little tab, the ramps. You know, we don't really consider that online element of it. But I think a lot of people were doing a real knee-jerk reaction and ticking boxes. Some people weren't, and I'm sure you've got lots of stats on the people that don't do anything at all. But I think, now we have to go further, and we have to go beyond that tick box exercise.
Excellent. All right.
I think the usability and user friendliness of a tool like Recite Me or an accessibility tool on a website, how easy it is to use and engage with will, I think, help people to not just use it as a tick box and that's it, we just have it on the site and that's it. If it's done effectively, which I think Recite Me has done, that it can be used, it can be an engaging tool, even for people without disabilities. Some of the tools in it are great. It's great to be able to change into over 100 languages. It's not just about making it accessible to people with disabilities. What all the languages and so on does, it opens it up to anybody viewing any of your jobs pretty much anywhere in the world.
Thanks, Cathal. Do you know what? I'm going to jump in. Sorry, everyone. I'm going to do something that I promised myself I wasn't going to do. So if anyone wants to stick on chat just to jog on, I will. But I just realised that we're talking about Recite Me. It's come up a couple of times. It's worth me just showing you very briefly what it is we're talking about so that you can get the context. If I share my screen, really straightforward. I'm not going to sell this. I'm just going to show you. Basically, what we have is a toolbar that sits at the top of any web page. It's deployed by JavaScript, and the organization can then use the toolbar, or anyone that visits the website can use the toolbars, all of the tools on the toolbar. And if I very quickly just show you this list of tools, we've got screen reader and translation. This helps people to perceive the content on a My Careers microsite, a web portal, your learning and development portal, your applicant tracking systems. We've got over 100 languages and 33 of them are text-to-speech. And my favorite for the candidate journey is our MP3 download. We'll probably get into this later, but the ability to download an audio file of all of the information that has to and fro during the candidate journey, so that you're not beholden to reams of paper and print-offs at home, is vital. And then we move through to our customization, personalization tools that allow people to change font, the look and feel. And I suppose dyslexia is a really good place to start with this, because our CEO is dyslexic, and we have quite a few dyslexics in our sales team as well. And everyone experiences it very differently. So one person would prefer the screen reader, whereas another would prefer to use a specific font to anchor the text. It gives it more weight. And then the final set of tools on the toolbar are reading aids to enhance understanding. So the average reading age in the UK is between 9 and 11. And whether you're going for a really high-powered job or you're going for an entry-level job, you don't like to feel that you're not good, you're not smart, and you can't do it. But even I find there's words out there that I have no idea what it means. And anyone that's had any experience of working with recruitment agents, and I class myself as a former recruitment consultant, boy, they can write job specs, can't they? Those job descriptions that you've given them the spec and it says do this, and then all of a sudden the flowery prose comes out and it's word. It's full of those great phrases. You sit there and you think, I don't know what that job is. So we give them reading aids as well, including dictionary and other things. So that's just very quickly a little bit about the Recite Me toolbar that gets installed. I just thought, given that we were talking about it, it was worth me flashing that up.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
I think it's really important, Darren, and you're coming onto this page now, and I think that we're talking about the candidate journey and experience, and we often in the TA profession and recruitment profession talk with the top of the funnel, and widening our talent pool. And if you widen that talent pool to attract people in, and those people can't access that information, you've failed at the very start of that journey to be inclusive. And it before it's even easy to use.
I agree, and it's that it is bringing that shifting left. I think is the common parlance. Is shifting your thinking left of funnel. So right back to the start. The earlier you can start thinking inclusively, the more likely you are to start becoming inclusive in what you do. But it's a bit like I'll try. I said I was going to stretch analogies and examples to breaking point before they start. It's a bit like Facebook comes out and says, here's our new tool. Give us your email address. Trust us. We'll be fine. We're trustworthy. You can't tell someone that you're inclusive and expect them to believe you. You can't tell someone you're accessible and expect them to believe you. What you have to do is evidence it in every little thing, every little step of the way. And so I thought before we got into the candidate journey in its stages, we might be worth just applying that mindset, that inclusive mindset, to also the audiences that are involved, the stakeholders, the people who are skin in the game when we come to hire. And I suppose before I hand over to Jim and Cathal, I just wanted to say that whenever a new role comes along, it always excites me at Recite Me. I'm always excited when we're recruiting. You always have that kind of feeling of, I wonder who we're going to get and how good they're going to be. And we always want them to come on board and thrive, not merely survive. But that mentality has to then shift left, just like the inclusive statement. We're all guilty, I think, of being busy, and recruitment seems to be one of those things that you fit in rather than you focus on. And so I'm just very conscious that we consider the different perspectives as we go through the candidate journey. We've got the recruiter, in-house or external. We've got the hiring manager. We've got the human resource team that's going to, send the letters, support the process, on board, induct. Then you've got the team that this person's going to work alongside. And the thing that screams to me about this is each and every one of them are a person, an individual with their own hopes, fears, challenges, needs, aspirations. And yet, how quickly do we move the conversation from the human point of view to the delivery point of view, that milestone, we've got CVs. Have we sifted? Have we shortlisted? We move recruitment through the gears based on milestones as opposed to the perspective of the people around it. So I thought it was worth just firing this slide up and Jim, Cathal, getting your take on it.
Even before the candidate journey and the candidate experience, and you want that to be accessible to everybody and everything. Also, like something to consider before diving in and making sure that everything is accessible to the candidate and all that kind of stuff is when you actually hire somebody, then that it's not just, you're not just, promoting accessibility in the recruitment process and stuff like that, but when they join the company, that also needs to resonate when they actually jump in and join the team and they meet all the various people you just talked about there. So while, yes, accessibility and candidate experience is very important, it also needs to come from within the organization as well once you hire the people. But yeah, no, I mean, the candidate journey, I mean, it starts from the first interaction that candidates have with a company, which is going to be the job description, more than likely. But, a lot of hires or a lot of candidates can also be they can be customers of some of our customers. They may be already following them on social media and so on. So they may have kind of an idea of what the company is like and stuff like that before they start on the actual candidate journey with them. So, you know, accessibility and inclusion and all that kind of stuff, it really comes from within the organization before candidates get into the whole recruitment process. But from, you know, it's the job description is probably the first area where a candidate is going to have interaction with your company. So, you know, job ads and descriptions are massively important. Like we've got video and audio job adverts built into our ATS, and you know, I think the video and audio job ads are going to get a lot more common now moving forward. We're trying to think of ways to make that accessible through video if our customers use that. But you know, the journey starting off from, you know, job descriptions, and I think we can all appreciate that there's some really.
As part of our partnership, Cathal, you were kind enough to give us access to the Rezoomo tool, and that's the first realization. And I should probably caveat this with, you know, the biggest hypocrite in the room is absolutely me, because, you know, we talk a good game about all of this, but again, it's not something that we follow. You know, my get out of jail card is that, you know, this is a journey that you have to commit to be on, but you have to remind yourself you're on it almost every day, or else it's quite quickly you start to lose sight of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so one of the great things about the Rezoomo platform is the fact that you can enrich so much of that job posting with team stories, with videos from the hiring manager, with the brand noise that isn't just trust me, we're inclusive, but here's the evidence we're inclusive. And I think
and the video and audio, like it complements, you know, all the tools within Recite Me as well. But like the video and audio, doing a video and audio job description is by definition kind of being inclusive and making it accessible. Some people may want to just watch the video straight away or listen to the audio straight away, but that's allowing them to consume the information whichever way they want to, or whichever way they're comfortable with. So you've got the great tools. You've got the tools of Recite Me, where all the text can be read out, and you can change the contrast and all that kind of stuff. But then if you use the video and audio then as well, you're also providing that other way for people to consume the information about the job as well.
Yeah,
I think tying it all together and that candidate experience, like I see some really, really bad job descriptions going out, and it always amazes me in this day and age how you still see really, really poor ads going out. But like there's so many tools there to really create these rich and engaging ad campaigns and ultimately make them accessible to everybody. Various different tools with them.
I think you were saying, Darren, there, you know, especially in recruitment, I'll put my hands up. I've been in recruitment 20 odd years, that I thought I was probably the best at writing job adverts from my own perspective and not considering anyone else's perspective. And I think still, as Cathal was saying, there are a lot of very ads that are not thought about in a way. And you go back to that original point, where do you start from? Who do you ask? Asking everyone in your team, asking people around you. And the element you were saying about people telling, you know, it's great to tell people what you do. And with the combination that we have, we're able to show people, you know, you're able to show that journey, show that inclusion, show the diversity, show the different people in your team. And you're able to very clearly put a very clear message out there and allow people to access that information in a range of ways. So I think it is about job adverts rather than job descriptions. You know, it's telling and selling a story combined rather than just telling something. You know, you're actually showing, you know, the whole area, but allowing people to have that ability to read it, to hear it, to see it, to understand it, and then communicating the same way. I did a talk last year about communication as a two-way street. And that led into to talk on neurodiversity and actually into autism and that area, which is one of the passions of mine, to understand that accessibility point of view, and actually understanding what we say and what we don't say in a job advert is really, really important. And sometimes you can convey that better over audio or over video, and so can the person at the other end as well.
Yeah. And so I suppose thanks both for that. I think it's fair to say that everyone thinks searching for a job starts with the advertisement, and you just have to get that bit right. And that's where we can sort of wash our hands of it to an extent and just wait for the applications to come in. But I think you're both making really salient points that it's so much more than that. It does play into communication. It plays into so many nuanced things in the candidate's mind around, is this a company I want to work for? Is this the job? Is this job right for me? And if I could for a second, if you think of someone that might have something like dyspraxia or dyslexia, that's a hidden disability, and it's one that they're going to choose when to talk about and how to talk about, but it's always in their thinking. And so if you're not looking like the inclusive employer at the job ad stage, you're being sifted as well. And so the candidate considers an awful lot during this stage. And one of the things that is inevitable is they'll go to the website, and whether that's the careers pages or other, to find out more. And it's that thing of, I suppose, if there's a takeaway here, it's don't just think about how to make your job adverts sound inclusive and accessible. Think about the jump-off point to where is the candidate going next to find proof of that. They're going to go to your website. They're going to go to LinkedIn. They're going to look at who else, your stories, your recent, who's the latest half a dozen people that have joined the business and what have they said about it. That's where you want to move the conversation to once you've got a great advert. I'm mindful of time, gentlemen, so let me just click this one on to the application. And I don't think we need to go into too much detail here because we all know about CVs. Cathal, you mentioned it right at the start. It was it was the seed that was sown for Rezoomo to become a thing, and the digital CV. But let's talk about CVs just for a second. This is when I was 18. I remember writing my first CV, and it was a train wreck because I had no experience. By the time I was 30, looking for my next job, my CV was a litany of things I didn't know what to put in and why and when. Now you've got all sorts of different templates you can copy from, all sorts of advice and websites you can go to. But how many of them are accessible? How many of them are inclusive? And how many of them are trying to support what we're trying to talk about today?
Not many, I don't think. Like I've never come across any of the kind of tools that you guys provide in an applicant side of things or ourselves to a certain degree. So like with our digital CV builder, you can do the video introduction, you can record samples of languages you speak, upload any type of rich media into it and so on. Now we're going to be adding the Recite Me tool into the dashboard for candidates. So all of our customers' candidates, all of our clients' candidates, they will have access to all the accessibility tools within the actual digital CV builder. So the CV builder is going to be completely accessible. They can change all the fonts and colors and all that kind of stuff, and also do all their videos and their audio and all that kind of stuff. Just from my own experience, I found the paper CV extremely limited. I was a digital marketing manager when I moved over to London, and then when I started looking for a job, but I couldn't put up reports or videos or anything into it. It's just such a flat document, and especially for people with some disabilities, could find it extremely hard to articulate all of the stuff that they've done down on paper. And I've heard this multiple times where they might be able to really articulate themselves and come across really, really well in video or audio. And I just think the paper CV, I think while it is still the standard and everything, I'm actually quite surprised that it is still the standard application document.
I agree. I'm not smart enough to know, or innovative enough to know what replaces it, but I do think we should look at different, certainly de-emphasizing what we do with a CV and trying to find other tools that can enhance and enrich a candidate's application. I think video is really engaging. As someone that hires salespeople more than anything else, we always look for attitude and track record. They're the two things that I like, and they're the two things that, for some reason, CVs just don't have on them, right? No one puts the track record, how they've achieved, and how they approach the day, the week, the month. Okay, Jim, anything to say on the application side before we move on?
Yeah, I think yeah, all relevant and points, and I think that point that we're discussing at the moment with transferable skills, you know, we have an abundance of people applying for roles at the moment. I think it's Bristol area that has gone up by 203% per application, and showcasing some of the transferable skills for the roles that are there. And a prime example is yourself as a hiring manager within the sales side. You know, a lot of the time we've tried to employ like for like. Which it always isn't inclusive as well. That's another story as we go back on. But if you're looking at transferable skills from the different people out there with different roles, to actually put everything down on paper, and even myself, you know, I've been around the block. You know, I'm long in the tooth and been doing this a long time. To actually explain everything I've done, you wouldn't read it. You couldn't go anything, and I couldn't demonstrate everything. And that could be people with a long career or a short career. So their ability to use audio, the ability to use video, choice, to have that choice, I think is respectful as well on that application.
Just a quick one. Do we think there can be too much choice in the application process? Is like if you give people too much choice, could that be an issue for hiring managers because they've got applications coming in different media?
I think that's a really important question because, I think that's a really important question because what happens if your hiring manager is the one that has the challenge and doesn't like 16 pages of text to have to go through? Yeah. Right? Because, you know, we talk about bias, you know, in the recruitment process, and there's all sorts of tools you can get now to try and take bias out, right? But what about the hiring manager that just doesn't want to read 9 pages because it makes them feel that that's where they're weakest, you know, on black on white text on 9 pages of printed out A4, whereas the applicant that did that had that 1-page shiny PDF with images and a link to a video he could watch, or whatever it is, she's the one that gets the job, you know.
That's it. Yeah.
And is that bias? Where does that fit in this inclusive story of making journeys? And I think nothing changes until, and then this is the difficulty, right? If we're invested in the journey, we're invested in the outcome. We want it to be a success. It's really difficult to define success in recruitment beyond the milestone that's just been passed, right? We've hired, success. They've started, success. Where do we draw the real line of success? Is it 6 months after they've joined? Is it when they're leading their own team, happy, healthy, motivated? And this all plays back to this idea of until we define what success really means for us, we can't really align that question whether the CV is one of many, there are too many. Do you know what I mean? I think it's horses for courses. It's a horrible answer, but it's horses for courses in a way. Because if you're hiring for a digital manager, I want to see your show reel. I want to see the ad campaigns you've run. I want to see the videos you've produced, the reach, the click-throughs, and all of those good stuff. But if you're an accountant, if I'm hiring an accountant, what do I want to see? You know?
Yeah. It's completely different, like absolutely, yeah.
I think there's an important thing to ask on the journey. I think, you know, you said at the very start, it's mapping out that journey, walking through that journey as well to ensure that it's fit, it's right, it's purposeful for the role you're hiring, the people you're trying to attract, the wider audience, but also asking the people on that journey, what was it like? You know, and what feedback they could have all the way through that application journey, you know, and as you basically had back there, that feedback loop, and that feedback loop is to the candidates, you know, at any stage, you know.
Cool. Sorry, everyone. I appreciate we're riffing and time's ticking by. So the interview stage was the next one we've put up there. I suppose all I want to say on the interview stage is that please do consider before, during, and after, and not just the interview itself. And please do consider the interviewer as much as the interviewee. Again, it's perspectives. We can make the candidate journey a bit more inclusive, but if we miss out on the hiring team, the interviewing team, then we might not be supporting them as well as we could.
Yeah.
Please.
And like, you know, now everybody is really pushing onto video interviews. I think something people should consider is not everybody is going to be very comfortable maybe getting on a video interview, and you know, it shouldn't just be taken on that the actual video interview itself. Some people, you know, they find it very difficult, and it can be very nerve-wracking to do it on video. So I think it's something that people need to consider. Even that we've seen a lot of our healthcare providers in Ireland all switching over to video interviews. Now, obviously, video interviews have been around for years and so on, but from an accessibility point of view, you know, some people with various different disabilities might find it a bit difficult. And maybe giving them the option of, you know, not being a video interview, but an audio kind of meeting interview or something like that.
Yeah.
I think just pigeonholing everybody into a video interview can, for some people, can be quite difficult.
Absolutely. And the task-based interview, you know, if you're going to set a task, how inclusive and accessible are you making the prelim and the delivery of what you want them to do, right the way through to supporting them in achieving and delivering the task itself. Jim, sorry, I jumped in.
No, I was going to say, you're absolutely right, that video element, and not everyone has the ability, capability, or the tools to do that. And maybe, Cathal, you've just hit on a new a WeWork video space area where people who don't have that ability can go in and access, you know, video engagement and video interviews from booths. That's another story, future of work. There we go. Something Becky might be interested in chatting about in the background.
All right. So we've tackled the heavyweight parts of it, the big broad bits of search and application and interview, and things start to narrow down because we've got our shortlist. Or have we? I mean, how does that happen? How do we make shortlisting and selection inclusive? Because that's still part of the candidate experience, right? The candidate's not necessarily involved in this bit, of course, but the hiring team is, and those stakeholders, the audience I mentioned earlier on. And again, it's just having that mentality, that inclusive mentality of shifting this left and thinking about it as a constituent part of every decision of every stage that we have. And I've put on this clarity welcome. You know, I think whenever it comes to making an offer or sitting down and trying to shortlist, what are we using? Are we using scrappy bits of paper where notes have been taken during the interview? Have we recorded the interview? Is that a good thing? Having a transcript and a recording so we can go back and relive moments in interviews. There's so much out there. Tools out there within reach already. We can go grab and use to make this whole thing more inclusive if we want to. But it takes effort. So it starts with a thought, and then you've got to follow through with the action.
Yeah, I think like for making shortlisting and stuff accessible. I do think the digital CV builder that gives the candidate the option, and I'm not just saying our own one, but anyone out there that has these kind of tools in it. So like they can do their text, all the text information like they normally would on a paper CV, but then they've also got that option to do the video as well. So if they feel more comfortable doing video than the text, or if they feel more comfortable doing the audio and stuff. So having all those options for them in the one tool. And so, you know, if they're all using that to apply for the hiring manager shortlisting, okay, at least they have all of the information there, but they also have the videos, and so can help that way. Again, it's giving the candidates the options and the tools, but then again, going back to what I said a while ago, there is a fine line there. Too much flexibility and stuff could actually hinder hiring managers in their shortlisting, because how do you compare one person who's done a video and no paper CV to another person who's done the paper CV but no video?
Absolutely.
So, you know, there's a couple of the difficulties there.
Jim, anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think everything is relevant there, but I think it comes down to once the candidate has applied and it enters that internal team, you know, there's the accessibility area for the internal team to read, to hear, to see, to view, but also having structures in place, having very clear training, very, very clear methods on what you're going to do, what the company approach is, you know, because that's the inclusive bit there, because you are now, that's in the hands of a human being, and we talk about bias and we talk about inclusion, you know, but that comes down to, you know, sometimes training and understanding with the data within a system, and a system like Rezoomo's, what point of the journey has that person fallen over? You know, you know, if you can go back and look at that data, then you might be able to ascertain that might be and could be a problem with people in the business. So it's understanding the data, and that's another thing within the system where you're able to map out that journey. You see that candidate flow, that journey the candidate's going on, and if there's a certain hurdle and a certain point in that journey that people drop off more than ever by one particular hiring manager, is that an issue? Is that a training issue?
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's an internal thing that we need to look at. And it's not always the tools that are there to remove stuff that help, especially if there's an internal issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cool. And the final point on that slide, get ready and prep the team, kind of plays into the next slide, which the next stage of the process, the induction. So this may not be the hiring manager at all. This might now, this could be HR. But we've had the offer, we've made the offer, it's accepted. It's very easy not to prep the team, the people that we're going to be working. And I don't mean this in the sort of sense that we know that this person coming into the business has a challenge, and so we're prepping the team and saying, mind your P's and Q's. That's not what this is. This is prepping the team for any new hire, right? Because it's just inclusive. It's just, this is how you should do it. We've got a new starter coming on the 17th. They're going to sit here. They're going to do this job. Michael put testament to this. We've built but not released internally a set of top trumps where if you're a new, does anyone know what top trumps are, by the way? God, I'm showing my age. People might not. Top trumps are where you sort of get a card game and it's like someone has a superpower and you score more out of the other and you get their card. But it's a bit like a top. So we've got top trumps for each person that's going to work for us in terms of what they are, what their job title is, and rather than superpowers, it's their key interests and a little bit about them. So they can share as much or as little as they want on these little top trumps cards. But I want to be able to hand these cards around digitally ahead of people starting, so that when someone joins, the first experience they have of their team is that they've got their top trumps cards for their team. They know that Chris is quite happy to call himself a dyslexic and says I'm a dyslexic sales guy, but I'm also a really good sales guy. It's not a crutch for me. It's an opportunity to think differently, and it's all there. His favorite films, his favorite food, and we get a chance to then share that. And make that experience more inclusive, one hopes. But like I said, biggest hypocrite in the room. We've done the work, we just haven't rolled it out.
And like, especially now with the way work is going, like making remote or digital induction or onboarding inclusive and accessible as well. It will be a challenge. I know I've seen my wife start a new job during COVID, and she was onboarded digitally. She's never met all the people that she works with, so that's another area now that people will have to tackle and ensure that it is accessible for anybody that they're bringing on, and inclusive and all the things that come with it. But doing that digitally now will be, it'll be even more important to get that right if you're onboarding a person with certain disabilities.
Absolutely, and you might not know, right? I mean, we just don't know, and that's the inclusive mindset, right? We should come to the induction period with an open mind. That this is, if there is a time to really turbocharge the inclusivity aspect of it, it's now, because this is really where it pays dividends. So if someone joins, and the tools that you're giving them don't allow for accessibility, them to use them, be that your learning management platform, be that everything's on paper and there's not a digital equivalent anywhere for them to use the workarounds they've built up over time to use, then you're setting them up to survive, not thrive, and that's the pain for me.
Completely. And if you've done all that great work at the very front end and they come through the journey and then they just hit a barrier at that point, it's crazy. And there are some great organizations and firms that can help the work environment, the workspace, to understand, employing people in an inclusive way, and people from different backgrounds as well.
Absolutely.
We'll have an onboarding tool coming early next year. Built into the system, and this will be a key consideration.
Fab. Good stuff. Right, sorry chaps, I'm just moving on because I'm looking at the clock and we've already run over. So I'll try and ask for just 30 seconds maximum on this one, but it's really important because it doesn't end with the hire, it doesn't end with the induction. If we're going to really draw a line to success, what we're really saying is this person's going to thrive, they're going to be happy and healthy. And so have that in mind when you move your mindset to an inclusive mindset and you shift left through the different stages of the journey. What that really means is you've got to start with the outcome and reverse engineer it. So the outcome for me is absolutely, we want these guys to thrive. And so any new hire to thrive needs to be trained, needs to be measured, of course, the expectations need to be managed, but more importantly than anything else is that last word on that slide is engagement. They need to be engaged. And if you're not inclusive, you will have a disengaged candidate pretty quickly, a new starter that starts to just be lost amongst the numbers, lost amongst the cogs, doing the job but not enjoying the job, getting by and not having that career development that they want. And so understanding what it is that you want them to achieve and then giving them the workarounds and the tools and the choice so that they can deliver it. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think now, because of COVID and the shift in the way people are working and stuff like that, people with certain disabilities, they will have, I think, a bit more freedom and flexibility because they may be able to work from home, work at their own pace in their own office environment that makes them feel a bit more uncomfortable or a bit more comfortable. So I think, there will be some good things, I think, out of the kind of the new reality of working, remote working for people with certain disabilities. But then again, it comes down into engagement from the team with them if they're working remotely, especially good and constant engagement and making sure that they have all the tools and everything that they need to do to succeed in working remotely be very important.
Fab.
I think very, very simply, engagement that they're comfortable with. Ask them the questions. I think the journey doesn't stop, from looking at a company to going through the hiring process to onboarding within the business to actually exiting the company, all the way through that journey, people should be asked, are you comfortable with this? Is this right for you? Is this fit? Have we got that right? And I think a lot of people worry about getting this perfect journey. Nothing's perfect. We're always learning. There are lots of things we'll learn from today, from tomorrow, but if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to learn from it,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both. I just want to end this part of the discussion with why bother, and anyone that knows Simon Sinek or is a fan of Start With Why. Well, I'm ending with it, which feels like goes counter to everything that Simon Sinek says, and I'm a huge fan of what he puts out there. But the reason I'm ending with why rather than starting with it is if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's that you should bother. And the reason you should bother with this is because it's the right thing to do. It's hearts and minds. It's the right thing to do from a D&I perspective, a brand attraction perspective. It's the right thing to do from a human perspective. But it's also a smart thing to do. And I suppose the easiest way for me to reference that from a Recite Me point of view is if I just come out of the screen share for a second. Let me see if I can do this. And move to this. This is our Mawson Group. And in the first 3 months of working with Recite Me, our toolbar was launched 3,062 times between February and May. And that's a careers play. That's entirely recruitment. That's 3,000 people launching a toolbar to find work, to find their job in 3 months with Mawson Group. And beyond anything else, that tells me there's a need for us to think this way. Maybe it's not a need for Recite Me, so I'm not going to sell anyone Recite Me, but there's a need to think this way. Because if in 3 months Mawson Group can have 3,000 people using assistive technology toolbar, then, and this is it on their site, by the way, I can just click that button and it'll launch our toolbar live. There it is. Then for me, that's why it's the smart thing to do, not just the right thing to do. It has ROI. Jim, Cathal, anything to add on that?
I think it most certainly is the right thing to do. And going back to what we were saying at the very start, it shouldn't just be a tick box thing. Fortunately, there are tools like Recite Me that can make it user friendly and engaging. So it's something that, you know, all companies should really be looking at, not just in the public sector, which is being, you know, with the deadline in September, but all companies throughout their website, because I'm sure there's probably countless people that I know that I'm actually not aware that they may have certain neurodivergent disabilities or whatever, and you know, it must be frustrating for them, wanting not just in a whole recruitment area, but just wanting to engage with the internet or, you know, websites and stuff, but it's just not there for them. And I can imagine that's extremely frustrating for them. So I think it's very, very important to get this on. And, you know, I think, you know, tools like Recite make it easy.
Well, thanks, Cathal. Jim?
I think, you know, as you say, it's the right thing, the smart thing, and it's not a hard thing to do.
No.
I mean, the relationship you have with yourself has been very easy. You know, our mission is to make, you know, recruitment easier for everyone involved. You know, and that's the candidates that apply, it's the hiring managers that use the system, the recruiters. You know, and having that good, simple, easy relationship that's not hard. I don't want to use the term no-brainer, you know, but
use the term.
Yeah. You know.
Good. All right. So just to sum up, everyone, before I invite some questions and we wrap up for the day, what we're really saying is that the inclusivity is a mindset shift for most organizations. That you have to know the outcome that you're trying to generate, that you have to know the audience and the perspectives of who has skin in the game. And then you have to break down that journey and make sure that that candidate journey fits the role, fits the outcome, fits the audience. And at each stage of that journey, you have something to help support those people that may have need. I hope that that's all made sense. We've run over, I do apologize. But if you have any questions, throw them in the chat and Michael, I'll shout them out. Or if you're happy to, take yourself off mute and let's see if there's a Q&A worth having. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, because that's all music to my ears, right up my street, how you described an inclusive candidate experience. The challenge, I think, is the education of employers. You know, obviously when you're hiring or diversely, you've got to get the internals right before you bring people in from different backgrounds, otherwise they won't be accepted. In terms of candidates and applicants, one size doesn't fit all. To bring out the best in people for them to showcase their talents and abilities. Jim knows I run CV webinars. I've run 35 now as of tomorrow since COVID.
Wow. Very good.
People do not know how to write CVs.
I totally agree.
They really don't.
Yeah.
And it worries me. I've got all levels of people, from entry level through to exec. People that haven't been on the job market for years and haven't got a clue about how to present the best version of themselves. They've got long-winded CVs. They struggle to remove the extraneous information, and there's talent being missed. And what you're doing is amazing. The partnership you have is amazing. My question is, I suppose, a very broad one: is how do we educate employers to think differently, to come out of their comfort zone, to consider a different choice of applicant processes, as in how people can showcase their talents, when they're so used to conforming to a certain process that they implement themselves. So it's really frustrating. I'd just be interested in your experience of it and how you may have been able to educate people to think differently.
The horse to water comes to mind. You know, you can't lead it. There needs to be a compelling internal event in their universe, I think, and that can be and often is the enterprising champion that has this to heart. I can reference people who see our tool, work in HR or in the D&I team at an organization, and the number of times the first thing they tell me is, I'm new here, they've never had a role like me before, but I'm going to make change. And I think the more compelling events that start with a person, a champion, a conversation, the more likelihood that things will start to move. I'd argue, Becky, that the problem we've got is there's not enough champions and there's not enough compelling events. So I don't have a toolbox that I can pick out and say that compelling event works over here in this industry and that compelling event works over there. It tends to be, for me, it tends to be just hard work and communication, a lot of it, time and time again. I don't know if Cathal and Jim, you have.
Would you find like senior management would be surprised by the numbers? I don't have them in front of me, but I know they're quite large, about the numbers of people out there with neurodivergent disabilities or other disabilities that are not openly visible to anybody. Like if you're not providing accessibility to all those people, well then they're not going to be in your talent pool, quite likely.
Yeah.
And that's a huge amount of people to be cutting out of your potential candidates from the get-go,
Yeah.
I'm just sharing as you're speaking, Cathal, something that pretty much underpins what you're saying there, which is from RIDI. It's the 2017, so Michael, we might need to find the more recent one, but 75% thinks that their condition has an impact on their job. I read earlier that there was able-bodied is the wrong phrase. There's 80% of people in a job that don't identify themselves as having a disability. There's 50% of people in a job who have a disability. That 30% difference is where the battleground is. We have to find a way of finding the compelling events, Becky. You're totally right, it's a challenge. It is. Mindset change, especially institutional, organizational mindset change is really difficult. I remember the bell curve of, innovators, early adopters, laggards, all the way through. That innovation curve, for me, that curve for me is how we'll approach this. We almost need companies like the Accentures, the Capitas, the BTs, and then even more modern ones, not just the stalwarts, but the ones that everyone sees arising everywhere, the Ubers of the world, all addressing D&I and inclusivity is a battle worth, I will die on this hill. If we don't get this right, I will die on this hill. Until it happens, it will be people like Jim, Cathal, myself, and anyone who wants to join us talking about it and trying to put it on their agenda.
I think Becky, firstly, the great work you're doing, an amazing amount of chats you're having with people, which is of great value to help the job seeker and educate them. And that point you're saying about how to enlighten, how to move the dial with an employer is a challenge. And as Darryn and Cathal were saying, unless you have a champion in the business, stats are very good. Stats are really important. We talk about data in recruitment all the time. So that data translates in, this is the amount of people you're missing out on. This is the talent that's left behind. I think also that moment, and to be honest, for some businesses, that moment is now. For other businesses, it's not. Some businesses are hiring at a rapid rate, but some businesses have stopped. Some businesses have closed the shutters on recruitment. There are some fantastic heads of recruitment out there and talent and recruiters who are able to go in and help with that journey. Hire someone from that pool of talent to map out that journey for you. Now's a great time to look at that inclusion element. And, wrestle with your own challenges. Sometimes people think about themselves. You quantify that back to, have they been shopping on Amazon? Could they click the shopping basket? Could they see the screen? You imagine you couldn't click that little tick. So something relevant to them and how that translates into a wider audience of someone not be able to read that advert. You've crafted, as Darryn was saying, that fantastic advert, that fantastic role explaining and describing. But you have lost people because they can't access that information.
Yeah, I agree.
To me, it's a no-brainer. And I think once you're in that space and you talk about it and understand it, and sometimes it's putting hands up as well. Sometimes it's putting hands up and saying, we're not good at this. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. It's making that comfortable zone and a comfortable chat for people to engage with, really.
But we're really sorry, Becky. I'll let you come in. Sorry.
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just agreeing. I was agreeing with what you were saying.
I'm encouraged. I am encouraged. The number of events that myself and the team here have attended over the last 18 months, webinars like this, partnerships with Rezoomo, in-house recruiter, the IHR. The number of these conversations that are specifically focused on making recruitment more accessible, more inclusive, is on the rise. We could do one of these every other week. There's that much. It feels like there's that much interest in it. The problem I have is, as you've seen today, we don't get 100 people taking it up and watching it. We get invited to do the sound bites and not necessarily do the actual thing itself, which is, move the needle rather than talk about moving the needle. So it's a very real problem. It really is. It's the one that we will, it's our mission to find ways of, moving it.
I think so we have Recite Me is built into Rezoomo on the front end for job descriptions and everything kind of outward facing, but we're in the middle of integrating it into the actual application itself, into the ATS. So one of the things we will be adding in is in the new report section, you'll be able to see how many times your Recite Me tool was launched, and you'll be able to dig that down into a specific job. So hopefully, maybe if recruiters who use our system, in-house recruiters, they will have that data there to show, look, the Recite Me tool was launched, 1,000 times last month. So it's obviously being used by people, and there's a high percentage of those people that will have launched it will have, certain disabilities. It won't be just about the language tool, which is obviously very useful, but that'll hopefully be a good indication to people of how many times it's actually used on a specific job, and they might be able to use those statistics then to kind of to push the accessibility agenda within the company itself.
I think as Cathal was saying, that ability to use the tool internally on the system. And, you think how many, we have the ability, we have unlimited users, so anyone can use the system. So you think within a big, large organization, we often talk about that external client-facing inclusion element. What about internally? Darryn was saying, first of all, starts within. So that education journey could be talking about how many people in your business, would have accessibility issues for the systems. And that's another thing we're trying to overcome by having that, the partnership with Recite Me within the system, so then the users of the system, and then they can be the internal champions to go out and promote it, externally as well.
Cool.
I wish you well on your mission. I think it's fantastic.
Thanks, Becky. I really appreciate you attending today and your question at the end there. Thank you.
No,
and
if
we can help you with any of your people as well, I know we're due to catch up at some point, but maybe worth having a chat a little bit more about what we can do and some of these sound bites. As Darryn was saying, we're very passionate about this, and the audience has been great, but the audience isn't enough. It isn't enough at the end of the day, and it's not about selling our tools. It's about what our aim and our missions are to do. And as I said at the start, it isn't hard. So
exactly, yeah.
You just got to take the first step.
That's the hardest bit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. That seems like a good place to press pause. Thank you all.
Thank
Becky,
you.
lovely to see you and meet you. Thank you. And hopefully we'll cross paths again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks very
All the
much.
best.
We'll do
Thank
the
you very
wave.
Thanks very much.
All the best. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya. Bye. Bye.